Welcome to the debate. Imagine going to sleep, completely confident in your $1.2 million IT budget, right? And then you wake up to realize you've been automatically enrolled in this totally unmeasured, uncapped variable cost plan, something that could, I don't know, spike 50-fold.
Yeah, an absolute nightmare scenario for any FinOps team.
Right. And that is exactly what happened to the enterprise AI world this April, because Anthropic just killed the $200 enterprise seat. The new reality, it's $20 plus tokens at API rates.
Which means if your 2026 AI budget assumed a predictable flat fee subscription, you are now forecasting a variable cost line you've literally never measured.
Exactly. And you have to figure this out right now, because in that exact same breath, Snowflake just announced that getting real-time visibility into your AI budget is going to come at a 12x premium.
AI subscription era effectively died overnight. And nobody's spreadsheets, not even the most, mature FinOps teams, are ready for the fallout.
Which is why we're here today. We have to look at these massive simultaneous pricing flips and, well, ask what is really driving them. Because on one side, I look at the sheer computational weight of modern AI and I see an inevitable, mathematically sound correction. Agentic AI is just too heavy to subsidize forever. Metering compute is honestly the most fair way forward.
Fair.
Yes, fair. It's forcing the FinOps discipline into a maturity jump it has desperately resisted for years.
And I look at that exact same timeline and see something entirely different. The vendors ran a 3-year flat fee subsidy game specifically to hook enterprises on AI workflows.
Oh, so it's a conspiracy now.
It's a lock-in strategy. Now that the dependency is established, they are cashing in the lock-in by moving the metering structure. They aren't just repricing AI, they are turning governance and observability itself into a premium metered cost. They're actively monetizing visibility.
Okay, well, let's start with the loudest structural shift, which is Anthropic's move in mid-April. We need to unpack the actual mechanics of what changed here. Because for enterprise deployments of 150 users or more, the old model was a comfortable blanket. You paid up to $200 per user per month.
And that came with a massive bundled token allowance. You knew exactly what your costs were.
Right, but the new model completely rips that blanket away. It is now a base $20 platform fee per user per month, but every single interaction across Claude Code, and Cowork is billed at standard API token rates.
And let's not abstract what that means for a standard enterprise, okay? If you are managing a 500-user deployment, under the old system, you had a highly predictable $1.2 million annual line item.
Yep, $100,000 a month. Very clean.
Exactly. You could put in a spreadsheet, hand it to the CFO, and go to lunch. Under the new model, your fixed cost drops precipitously down to $120,000 a year for the platform fees. But that remaining $1 million doesn't just disappear, it converts into a completely variable token cost.
Right, and that variability is what is terrifying people. But we have to explain why that variability is exploding right now. It's not just tech inflation. It's a fundamental change in how the technology actually operates. We have moved from single-shot completions.
Like writing an email?
Right, where you ask an AI to write an email and it spits out 3 paragraphs. Now we're using agentic models. These are multi-turn reasoning loops. A developer using Claude Code isn't just asking a simple question. They are setting off an agent that continuously iterates. It reads repositories, it runs tests, fails, and rereads files.
And those loops consume 10 to 100 times more tokens. I get it.
Yes, at those rates, a flat fee is mathematically impossible to sustain.
I agree that the workloads are heavier, but let's look at the underlying vendor behavior that triggered this crisis. Anthropic didn't just passively realize the math was changing. They aggressively altered the performance mechanics right before flipping the pricing model.
You're talking about the prompt caching changes in March?
Exactly, because we have to explain how prompt caching actually works to understand the trap here. Think of prompt caching like a developer keeping a massive 1,000-page reference textbook open on their desk. For an hour, the AI could just glance down and read it for virtually no cost.
Because the context was already loaded into the system's memory.
Right, that was the old time to live, or TTL. But in early March, Anthropic cut that cache time to live from 1 hour down to 5 minutes.
Which fundamentally changes the compute demand on their servers. Keeping that in active memory is incredibly expensive.
And fundamentally explodes the cost for the buyer. By dropping that cache time to 5 minutes, Anthropic essentially forced the AI to go back to the library, check out that 1,000-page textbook, and read it from page 1 every single time the developer paused to get a cup of coffee.
That's a bit dramatic, but
No, it's reality. The token burn went exponential. Long coding sessions that used to be highly efficient were suddenly burning massive quota.
But wait, look at it from the infrastructure side for a second. Anthropic's margins were fundamentally breaking under the weight of these agentic loops. They were pre-buying massive GPU capacity to serve these million-dollar enterprise contracts at a flat rate. Meanwhile, developers were essentially running unconstrained compute loops.
Because the vendors told them they could.
But the spread between their subscription revenue and their actual inference costs became completely unsustainable. Passing the actual inference cost to the invoice is just the math catching up to reality. It ensures every new revenue dollar is backed one-to-one by metered compute. I mean, it's the most honest building model possible. I see where you're going with the honest math argument, I really do, but I completely reject the premise when you look at the wider context. This is the classic printer ink business model, just executed at a multi-billion-dollar enterprise scale.
printer ink, really?
Yes, the vendors subsidized the printer, the flat-fee AI seat, and gave us essentially free ink for 3 years. They did this specifically to get product teams, developers, and workflows inextricably bound to tools like Claude and Copilot. Now that the lock-in is achieved, they've flipped the switch to charge for the ink.
You really think this is a coordinated industry-wide lock-in strategy, rather than just, everyone hitting the exact same mathematical wall at the same time?
Look at the timing. You do not get OpenAI metering codecs, GitHub Copilot tightening limits, Windsurf instituting daily quotas, and Anthropic forcing migration, all within a single 30-day window by pure coincidence. They collectively realized the dependency was embedded deep in enterprise operations. But here is the most predatory part, what I call the renewal trap. Customers on older seat-based plans must migrate at their next contract renewal or lose their grandfathered terms.
Which naturally forces a renegotiation.
Yes, but a renegotiation where the buyer is completely blind. Because those tokens were previously bundled into that $200 flat fee, the vast majority of enterprises have absolutely zero baseline data on their per-user token consumption.
Which is a FinOps failure, honestly.
If a CFO asks today, what do our 500 Claude Code users consume per month in tokens? Almost no one has the answer. The bundle made the consumption invisible, so procurement teams are walking into a renegotiation with no data to benchmark against. They are stripped of all negotiating power. They are forced to accept whatever baseline the vendor models for them.
Look, I hear the frustration there, but I'm going to push back hard on who is responsible for that blindness. The fact that FinOps teams weren't capturing telemetry through the Anthropic admin API or setting up SSO attribution to track internal usage just because they had a comfortable bundled allowance?
They didn't need to.
That is exactly my point. That is a maturity failure on the part of the enterprise, not a predatory move by the vendor. You cannot expect a cloud provider to just eat the cost of your unconstrained multi-turn reasoning loops forever, just because your procurement team prefers the simplicity of multiplication. FinOps has to evolve.
It's incredibly easy to say FinOps has to evolve. But let's talk about what that evolution actually costs. Because if variable costs are the new reality, then real-time visibility becomes your only lifeline. You need a dashboard. You need to watch the spend.
Right.
And that brings us directly to the second massive shift, Snowflake's general availability of budgets for AI features on April 10th.
And to be fair, this is a genuinely powerful FinOps capability. It provides showback and chargeback for Cortex AI, Snowflake Intelligence, Cortex agents. You can create custom budgets, tag users by business unit, and track exactly how many credits specific teams are burning. This is the exact maturity jump I'm talking about.
It is a great feature on paper until you read the documentation fine print regarding refresh rates.
Oh, here we go.
The default refresh interval for checking that budget is 6.5 hours. and Snowflake charges 1 credit per month per budget for that. But if you are managing highly volatile agentic workloads where an agent can spin out of control in minutes, a 6.5-hour delay is completely unacceptable. You need a 1-hour refresh.
Which is now an option they provide.
Yes, at the cost of 12 credits per month. That is a 12x premium. The vendors aren't just passing the cost of compute to the invoice, they are monetizing visibility itself. You are paying a massive premium just for the privilege of watching your own money burn. This is a qualitatively new kind of cost. It's an observability tax.
Okay, pause for a second, because we have to break down why that premium exists mechanically. Observing compute in a data cloud is fundamentally compute itself. Checking a budget isn't just looking at a static web page.
But 12 times the cost?
Let me finish. It requires executing a SQL query against underlying usage views. In a platform like Snowflake, queries require warehouse time, and warehouse time costs credits. If you are pulling that massive telemetry dataset 56.5 times more frequently to get hourly updates, it mathematically requires more computational power and cluster uptime. It is a literal infrastructure cost.
I understand how data warehouses work, but we are talking about system logs. Charging a 12x premium to query billing logs feels less like honest infrastructure costs and more like rent extraction.
But even beyond the strict technical justification of warehouse uptime, the 12x premium is completely defensible if you look at it through the lens of incident economics.
Incident economics?
Yes. Let's walk through the math of a real-world scenario. Imagine you have a product team running a Cortex agent with a $10,000 a month budget. Somebody deploys a configuration error, say a broken termination condition in the agent loop. It gets stuck reading and analyzing the same massive dataset over and over. Suddenly, that workload is burning credits at 10 times its normal rate.
Which, honestly, is a very real nightmare scenario for anyone running agents right now.
Exactly. Let's say the normal spend is $350 a day. If you are relying on that default 6.5-hour refresh rate, that runaway agent burns unconstrained for 6.5 hours before any alert fires on your FinOps dashboard. At that 10x elevated rate, that single breach costs you approximately $950 before you even know it's happening.
Right, I follow the math.
Now compare that to paying the premium. If you pay the 12 credits for the hourly refresh, your first signal arrives in 1 hour. Your breach cost before detection drops to roughly $145. You just saved $805 on a single incident. When you frame it as risk mitigation for volatile workloads, paying for high-frequency observability is a highly defensible investment. The faster refresh pays for its 11 credit premium in one single catch.
Okay, that is a brilliant theoretical model, and I'm sure it sounds great in a vendor pitch deck, but it completely ignores the governance latency problem that happens in the real world. You are quoting that 1-hour refresh rate as if it provides a pristine, real-time enforcement loop. It does not.
How so? The query runs every hour.
Yes, the query runs every hour. But what is it querying? The underlying source of truth telemetry, specifically the Cortex AI functions usage history view, has a maximum latency ceiling of 60 minutes. It takes time for the platform to aggregate usage logs from distributed compute clusters and write them to the centralized billing view.
The SLA is 60 minutes, yes. Though practically, that data can be available in 10 to 15 minutes.
But as a FinOps practitioner, you have to govern to the SLA. If the underlying data you are querying is legally allowed to be delayed by up to an hour, then buyers are paying a 12x premium on the budget feature just to hit a platform bottleneck.
Well, now think about it. Your dashboard might refresh every hour, but it's showing you data that could be an hour old. That means your best case enforcement loop still allows an hour of unconstrained agent burn. And in an environment where multi-turn agents can burn thousands of credits in 60 minutes, an hour is an eternity. We are paying a premium just to be slightly less blind. Look, achieving sub-second latency on globally aggregated cost metrics requires massive, dedicated stream processing infrastructure. You can't expect real-time financial data without paying for the pipeline that delivers it. The era of free subsidized observability is over because the data volume generated by AI agents is orders of magnitude larger than traditional cloud logs.
But that is the core issue. The vendors are actively monetizing the visibility of the problem they themselves created with these new variable pricing models. And this isn't isolated to Snowflake. Look at the cross-platform pattern. AWS Bedrock Data Exports launched recently, and they charge S3 storage and Athena query cost just to get operation-level granularity on your AI spend.
True.
Capability. It is a metered product line item.
Which forces the discipline to mature. Operational cadences that were built for traditional cloud compute like EC2 workloads are fundamentally broken for agentic AI.
I'm not arguing the cadence isn't broken.
But with a standard virtual machine, a 6.5-hour visibility delay was perfectly acceptable because the server is either on or off. The financial variance over a few hours was maybe $20. But an AI agent is a dynamic, multi-turn loop. It can spawn sub-agents. The financial variance over 6 hours isn't $20, it could be $20,000. That structural difference demands high-frequency data engineering to monitor, and that engineering costs money.
I agree that the risk is higher. But if we accept this model without pushback, FinOps budgets are going to be devoured by the sheer cost of observability itself. Let's say it costs $50,000 a year in data warehousing and query premiums just to run an enforceable, low-latency governance loop on a $2 million AI workload. That is a massive new spend category. Teams are being forced to choose between financial ruin by runaway agents or financial drain by observability taxes. The vendors have leveraged workflow lock-in to charge for both the variable agent loops and the real-time visibility required to manage them.
Let's pull these threads together, because Anthropic's pricing shift and Snowflake's observability premium are really expressing the exact same structural thesis. From 2023 through 2025, the cloud industry absorbed the massive compute costs of AI to drive market adoption. They gave us the flat fees, they gave us the free dashboards.
The printer and the ink.
Right, but in April 2026, the compute absorption era ended. Anthropic pushed the actual inference cost directly onto the invoice. Snowflake pushed the literal cost of processing billing telemetry onto the buyer. The AI industry didn't just change its pricing model, it shifted the fundamental risk of AI from the vendor's balance sheet to the buyer's invoice.
I think that is the perfect synthesis of what happened. Even if we, view the intent differently, the buyer is now caught in a vice. We are moving from a comfortable, predictable world of optimizing within a known budget to operating inside a continuously volatile variable cost structure. The only predictable line items left on the spreadsheet are the base platform fees and the premiums we paid just to observe the chaos.
We synthesize the intent differently, absolutely. I see this transition to fully metered AI costs as an overdue reality check. It forces enterprises to finally build rigorous attribution models. It forces you to differentiate between a high-value, revenue-generating autonomous coding agent and a low-value script-drafting internal emails. You have to know your ROI because you are paying for every token.
And while I acknowledge the shift is happening, I absolutely stand by the view that it represents a coordinated extraction of value. They hook the enterprise, they change the rules, they are charging for the underlying variability of their models, and they're taxing us for the privilege of watching our own budgets.
But regardless of whether you view this as honest cloud economics or predatory lock-in, we both agree unequivocally on the facts. The flat-fee AI subscription era died in April 2026. Governance is now a metered product.
Completely. The enterprise invoice is going to look radically different next quarter. The safety nets are just gone.
Which brings us to the immediate urgency for anyone listening. If you are a FinOps leader, an IT director, or a CFO, and you cannot state today what your users consume per month in tokens, your Q3 forecast is already broken. You cannot negotiate a new contract from a baseline of 0. You need to explore per-user AI attribution platforms immediately, and you need to run a strict ROI analysis on the literal cost of your own governance queries.
Exactly. Don't wait for the renewal conversation to start building this data infrastructure. You have to know your consumption before the vendor tells you what it is.
We usually expect precision in our budgets. We want a clean, predictable line item. But the subscription era is over, and the cost of seeing the invoice is now explicitly on the invoice. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of the new AI cost reality. It's time to go check your telemetry.